Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon to those of you tuning in North or South America. Good evening in Europe and Africa. And good morning to those of you in Asia. I'm Casey Schulberg, Collier County Waterkeeper, and your host for these daily podcasts coming to you live from Glasgow, Scotland at COP26. As mentioned before, COP stands for Conference of the Parties and is a series of climate change conventions organized by the United Nations. They take place every year, except last year canceled for COVID. The one you probably all know about is COP21 in Paris in 2015, where the Paris Climate Accord was signed. There are 25,000 attendees from close to 200 nations, and we have 10,000 police with us, so we feel extremely secure. There have been protests every day. A large one is planned for tomorrow and Saturday. We expect 100,000 protesters over those 2 days. We're going to try to cover those protests with you tomorrow. Headlines out of COP so far. Trees. More than 100 world leaders promised to tackle deforestation, which is important because trees can absorb vast amounts of CO2. There have been similar initiatives in the past, but this one is better funded, so that's positive. Methane. More than 100 countries joined a scheme to cut methane emissions by 30% by 2030. The big emitters, China, Russia, and India, have not signed that protocol. Coal. More than 40 countries agreed to shift away from coal, the single biggest contributor of climate change. Some of the world's most coal-dependent countries, however, including Australia, India, and ourselves in the US, have not signed up. Money. 450 organizations that control $130 trillion, or around 40% of the global private assets, have agreed to back clean technology, such as renewable energies. So we're at day 5 of our reporting, but Sunday was really just the opening ceremony. So we're really at day 4 in the conference. We have 8 days to go. So far, I would score it as a cautious plus. So after that little initial overview, I'm really pleased to welcome my colleague, my co-host, the Kissimmee Waterkeeper, and the man who refuses the moniker climate change expert, Dr. John Capece. John, thanks for joining us tonight. As you all see, he's live from the conference. What are your top line thoughts about the conference so far? What kind of trouble did you get into today, John?
Well, first, as you can see, I'm here at the conference still. I was attending what I thought was the most interesting session of the day for those of us interested in water issues. And therefore, I remained here and just sort of hope for the best relative to the Wi-Fi connection to allow me to join you. But I'm here among the pavilions. And I mentioned in the previous briefing that there are perhaps 50 of these pavilions here, each with a half dozen to a dozen of their own presentations and events each day. And you do that math and there's an awful lot of these sessions. But I was wrong. There are not 50 of these pavilions. There are 97 of these pavilions. And it's just a huge task to try to even find out what each of these pavilions is doing each day. Almost every one of them has a separate website, or they simply provide paper schedules of their events. I went to the clearinghouse of the COP26 website, and they had a pavilions page linking to the pavilions and their schedules. Unfortunately, of the 97 pavilions, they had exactly 13 on their roster, on their index. So I'm here at the corner, which I think is the most dynamic corner of the pavilion area. And behind me, well, I'm sitting in, and I will show you, I'm sitting in the water pavilion. So they've had a number of presentations here today. It's a modest pavilion of, just a couple of dozen seats. And then across from us is perhaps the most prolific session producer of COP26 among all the pavilions, and that's the cryosphere pavilion. And as you can see, they focus on polar oceans, ice sheets, permafrost, glacier and snow, Arctic sea ice. And then across from them is the science pavilion. And I was just in there moments ago asking questions of some excellent presenters. And then I was rushing back over here to do sound checks with with Casey and then rushing back over there to listen in a little bit more. But very interesting session, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about that particular session here, if I may. What this Science Pavilion session was about is the Water and Climate Coalition. And this is a new entity within sort of the UN ecosystem of climate change groups. And the Water and Climate Coalition was launched just this Monday. And the speakers were saying that they received quite a lot of attention for this. And they're very encouraged by that. Now, the water climate nexus is something I've been trying to emphasize for at least 2 decades, probably longer. And it's a concern and a priority that I know Casey shares with me. And it's critical because whereas it's been difficult to get people to really invest themselves and advocate for action on climate issues in the United States, it's been rather easy or relatively easy to get them to advocate for water improvements, water quality improvements, water supply, water for natural ecosystems. So this Water Climate Coalition tries to bring those 2 sets of issues together. And the way I've addressed that in the past is trying to do calculations, develop metrics, and assess our water quality projects in Florida, in the United States, on the basis of their climate impacts. Because if you're doing a water quality project, it makes sense that it be carbon neutral and it use the best available technologies relative to our climate priorities. But the government agencies that often implement these projects have their own way of doing things, their traditional mechanisms and toolboxes. So I think it's important to work with groups like this Water Climate Coalition to help further the process of integrating these 2 sets of priorities into one so that they are mutually supportive. So one of the aspects they talked about on the Water Climate Coalition was the primary implications of climate change and water and the stresses upon water due to climate change are manifest in food security first and foremost. And food security is directly related to national security because food insecurity, as you've seen in other parts of the world, for example, the Arab Spring was triggered largely by food insecurity issues in certain of their countries. So we need to make sure that we address the food security implications and not let it fester and evolve into national security issues globally. And then, of course, there's the extreme events that we are all confronted with throughout the world, the floods, the droughts, etc. Now, my impressions from other aspects of today's COP were somewhat disappointing. I specifically went looking for the China exhibit. It was noted that China didn't send their top-level representatives and were sort of withdrawing from this process, much like the United States did, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I went and visited the China Pavilion. There is a China Pavilion, but it is not called the China Pavilion. In 2019, the China Pavilion was one of the largest, most attractive, and most dynamic of all the pavilions. Quite a large number of sessions and a wide range of topics. The China Pavilion now is called the China Corporate Pavilion. It's not even owned or claimed by the Chinese government. There's a certain philanthropist, Chinese businessman who has sponsored this exhibit, this pavilion, that's hosting a very limited number of sessions. So that was somewhat disappointing. The other nation that we heard was not participating fully was Russia. So I went looking for the Russian pavilion. And I found it on the map and I kept looking for it and I walked by it maybe 3-4 times because I'm not exaggerating. The name of Russian Federation is this large. They're clearly trying to keep a low profile. Not only that, But the contents, the materials that they've set out for visitors to peruse appeared to me to be materials that you would find at any sort of economic, corporate business generation exhibition, trade fair around the world. So they simply picked up various elements of their conventional trade fair portfolio and set them out for people to take a look at. But these included some relevant materials, particularly on forestry. You know, Russia has vast forests. Unfortunately, these forests are at extreme risk. So to their credit, Russia highlighted the proficiency and the scale of their forest fire management teams and crews. So that was interesting. The other set of information that they were emphasizing was nuclear energy. So clearly, regardless of what Western nations or the United States might, the directions and reservations we may have regarding nuclear energy, that is clearly not shared by nations like Russia and China. A large number of the presentations from the China pavilion in 2019 were focused on nuclear technology. The other pavilion I went looking for was India. India had by far the fanciest, the most impressive exhibition pavilion of all of them in 2019. They are not here. They are completely absent. Very disappointing. So we have three critical nations, the two highly populated nations of India and China, marginally represented or not represented at all in these critical pavilions where they interact with the larger climate change community. And then Russia, a very significant nation relative to fossil fuels, relative to land mass, relative to forests, relative to Arctic implications, marginally represented here. So I was somewhat disappointed to see those developments here today. But as I said, I was encouraged by the dynamics and the quality sessions going on at this particular intersection of the COP pavilions.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that Russia, China, and India were taking a back seat. And I think it was pretty clear that in 2019, under the prior administration, that really was absent on this issue, that they saw an opportunity to take the lead. And they were really, really prominent 2 years ago. And now, with Biden coming back strongly into kind of a leadership position, they seem to have gotten the message, and they don't want to be shown up. So that is not good if we're trying to have a worldwide global kind of consensus on these issues. Not good. Yeah, anything else, John? That's really interesting. You're muted.
No, I think we can move on to other parts of the conversation, and maybe at the end some other thoughts might come to mind.
Yep. Okay. Great. So as in yesterday's presentation and the day before, we wanted to share with you some photos from today's proceedings, courtesy of our teammate, Michal Fidler. So he shot some photos today. Take it away, Michael.
Thank you. I just like John was showing around where he is sitting at right now, I want to show also some still shots from the place where various meetings are taking place. So this would be the in the hydro building, and moving on to the SEC or the SEC building. Here is just a glimpse in one of the pavilions there, but there are tens of the pavilions, and we now know the exact number, so it's not 97, just like John told us. This is a peek into the Central Asia nations pavilion. Here would be a peek into the Science Pavilion or the IPCC Pavilion. Very interesting there, extremely interesting there. Moving on to, I'm kind of do not remember which pavilion is this one. I just get confused because there are just so many of them. And this photo should give you an idea how cramped it is in some of the pavilions. They are just simply right next to each other, and there are taking presentations place. The presentations are taking place all day long from the morning till evening. So it's really difficult to get to that meeting you really want to see. Some of the younger people do not really go into these pavilions anymore. They are just sitting in rounds in the various corridors and discussing their agenda right there. This, on the contrary, is a peek into the one of the meeting rooms, one of the official meeting rooms. You are not supposed to take any photos there. For some reason, I was allowed to go there, but nobody was allowed to be there. That's why the room is completely empty. But this is how it looks in one of the meeting rooms. I just don't want to show you just the pavilions from the, let's call it the scientific point of view, but also from the art point of view. So here is a piece of art or traditional symbols in the pavilion of Turkey. I think it would be the winner of the day. That was the most artistic pavilion I have seen today. And one of these gentlemen, this gentleman actually is just creating these threads in a traditional symbols. Moving on, when I was walking around, I also bumped into the former Secretary of State, John Kerry. He seemed to be very busy at COP. I checked his Twitter today, and he is tweeting very often and regularly. So special, as you would expect from the special presidential envoy for climate. And here is a peek into the pavilion of Bangladesh. I apologize to Casey since I'm taking a bit of his role because our next guest speaker will be from Bangladesh. So I just want to give you a peek into the Bangladeshi pavilion. There are two rooms, and when I just walked into the room at the back, I jumped in. I shortly met also the Minister of Environment of Bangladesh. That's the gentleman holding the microphone right now. So this is the last photo of my shoot today. Once again, look at the Bangladeshi pavilion, and with that image, I am turning back to you, Casey.
Well, that's a good lead-in because, in fact, our main interview tonight is the waterkeeper from Bangladesh. This is a program, a series of podcasts made for waterkeepers and by waterkeepers. John and I are both waterkeepers, and we're here, with support from the Waterkeeper Alliance. So really appreciative of that. I have been so amazed and touched. Some of these gentlemen and women from around the world I knew, and some of them I did not know. But the passion and the quality of activism on the part of these waterkeepers is just extraordinary. I mean, it's really moving and heartwarming to see these people doing such work all over the world and really driving change. I'm just really impressed with the people we're meeting here. So we're going to do an interview. We did an interview a little earlier today with Sharif Jamil, who is the Bangladesh waterkeeper. He's actually the Buriganga Riverkeeper, but he's also the prime waterkeeper in Bangladesh, and he's got extreme depth and gravitas. So let's hear from Sharif, and then we'll come back after that's done and talk a little bit more. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to introduce Sharif Jamil, who is on the board of BAPA, and he will tell you what that is. And he's also on the council of the Waterkeeper Alliance, and he is the waterkeeper from Bangladesh. So, Jamil, we are all ears.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello and good evening, everybody there in Glasgow. I'm very happy to be connected with you through this technology from Bangladesh. My name is Sharif Jamil, as you heard it, and I'm Buriganga Waterkeeper, and I also coordinate Waterkeepers Bangladesh. It's also the regional entity of the global platform Waterkeeper Alliance, and I'm also in the council board of Waterkeeper Alliance. But nationally, I work very closely as an environment activist with the largest and pioneer civil society platform for environmental movement in this country. We call it BAPA, in Bengali Bangladesh Poribesh Andolon, but if you translate it into English, it is Bangladesh Environment Movement. And currently I'm serving as the General Secretary of this platform. It's again my great pleasure to get an opportunity to discuss Bangladesh issues during the COP26. I am sure many of you know about Bangladesh because Bangladesh is very famous in terms of one of the worstly victimized countries from global warming. And Bangladeshi Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is leading the Climate Vulnerable Forum, which is a 48 Nations Forum. And that's why Bangladesh is very important, not necessarily for Bangladeshi leadership in the Climate Vulnerable Forum or Climate Talk, but also as the country for geographical location. It is the largest active delta in the world, and Bangladesh is the lowest riparian country in the Ganges and Brahmaputra basin. And on an average, 2/3 of the country is below 5-meter sea level. So you can imagine how much impact it can have from the global warming, sea level rise, extreme weather patterns coming from the Indian Ocean towards the Bay of Bengal, and the salinity intrusion towards the mainland from the coast. And of course, Ganges and Brahmaputra are two very big, mighty river systems that are unilaterally intervened in the upper riparian countries in India, China, Nepal, and Bhutan. We have a lot of hydroelectric dams, barrages, and unilateral water diversion projects that are actually making this problem aggravated, and the salinity intrusion is coming faster towards the mainland. And the northern part of the country is under desertification because we don't get much water during lean period. Naturally, it's not a water abundant country because we get 80% of water during monsoon and 20% water during winter. And because of the upper riparian interventions, we actually don't get the equitable share from the common water systems during lean period. So the climate change is worse than many other vulnerable nations in the world for Bangladeshi nations. This is one thing very important for us to remember. And there is another one significant thing is the population. It's a very densely population country in the world. We have more than 1,200 people in one square kilometer on an average. And if you come to the capital city, Dhaka, where I basically started my work as Waterkeeper member, I am Buriganga River Keeper, as I said, and Buriganga River is the river that actually made this capital. Bangladeshi capital Dhaka grew 400 years ago by the bank of this river Buriganga. It's a small river, but very important and significant. But the reason I'm telling it is Dhaka is horrifyingly densely populated. In 1 square kilometer of Dhaka, there are about 50,000 people living here. And if you think about the slums, it is sometimes 100,000 and 150,000 people in 1 square kilometer in this city. So as a city river, my river has huge problem of encroachment and population pressure, and industrialization here did not grow following proper zoning systems and development of other infrastructures that it requires to mitigate the pollutions and other thing. So industrial pollution for Dhaka rivers is a very, very alarming thing, and all the rivers around Dhaka actually are toxic during the lean period. So with these problems, all those people who are climate migrant in the coastal area, as climate change already hit Bangladesh, we have huge erosion in the coast. We have salinity intrusion in the farmland. There is no agriculture. Crisis of drinking water is there. And because of the wrong commercial and cordon approach in terms of managing our river systems, we have got a lot of polders in the coastal areas. And when cyclones and big surges enters into Bangladesh, which has been happening very recurrently these days due to global warming, and we have evidence from Ayla, Cedar, Amphan. These are big cyclones that actually happened in last 10 years in this country. And when the saline water enters enters inside the polder area, it doesn't go to the sea back because we have obstructed their natural flow. So therefore, all those climate migrants are coming to the capital. It is estimated that more than 700,000 people are coming from the coastal areas every year for the last 10 years. And among these 700,000, 400,000 are coming to Dhaka, in the capital. So my river has huge pressure from the climate migrants from the coastal areas. And Bangladesh government is in a very, very important crossroad of development in terms of economic growth through industrial growth. And all those industries are focusing on navigational transportation facilities. It is riverine country, as I said, in Delta. So the coastal areas are under focus from many perspectives in terms of setting up the industrial hubs. And if you see Bangladeshi coast, we can find there are 3 major hubs where government has planned to develop plans to ensure raw materials like for industrialization, you need energy and power. So government set up power hubs, and the government also came up with the power system master plan in 2010 first. They revised it in 2016, and in 2021 they are reviewing it again. But still, in 2016 we saw that the total power share by coal from the total power production will be more than 30%, while it was only 2.5% when the plan was adopted. So there was a big plan to set up a number of coal-based power plants in the coast, where there are some very unique ecological treasures are located in the coast of Bay of Bengal, like the Sundarbans. It's a global World Heritage Site. Sundarbans is not necessarily a simple forest or a simple mangrove forest. It's like 1,800 kilometers of waterway, more than 5,000 canals and rivers are all interconnected. It's like a natural wonder in the world. So Sundarbans is under attack by these dirty industries from these 2 sites, one in Rampal, another one in Paira. And also Paira is very important because Bangladeshi national fish, Bangladesh is a country said the people of Bangladesh are people for rice and fish. And the national fish Hilsha, it is a migratory fish, comes from the sea to the mainland. And one of the 3 major landing stations is Paira, where the coal-based power plants are also being developed. And already Hilsha changed their route. You can learn it from the news media. And as it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site for protection of the Sundarbans, UNESCO World Heritage Committee came up with the recommendation for government to conduct a strategic environmental assessment. Government is doing it, but we recently found that did not follow many expectations from the civil society and the organizations who were working on it. It was not done independently. It didn't consider science adequately, and it did not do proper consultation with the stakeholders. So the strategic environment assessment that were expected by the global community to be followed as a document to consider whether the investments and economic growth in the coastal areas are properly going ahead or not, that itself is not acceptable. I mean the SEA. So these are some backdrops we have, and we need to look into these matters holistically while we are going to the global community. As for example, more than 100 nations already signed for a declaration not to chop down any more trees or forests, but Bangladesh did not ratify it yet in the COP26. We think that's not a wiser move for Bangladesh because we are leading the vulnerable nations where we're demanding adequate compensation from the Western world for the loss and damage, which is very legitimate, and the global community should think about it very seriously. But at the same time, we ourselves needs to look into the development plans we have already set up. This is very optimistic and very appreciable that the government already turned their understanding, and they cancelled 10 coal plants already. They are not going to build it. There are more expectations and discussions from the government. The planning minister, the day before yesterday, told that we should not do any coal plant because the entire globe will be away from coal, and if we do coal, then we will be alone.
That's a terrific overview, Sharif. So thank you so much. Sorry that Bangladesh didn't sign the deforestation ban that was issued yesterday, but it does sound as though you've had some success pushing back on coal-fired plants. So congratulations on that. I'm the Collier County Waterkeeper in Southwest Florida, and it sounds as though we have a lot of issues in common because the state of Florida is entirely under 5 meters above sea level. We also have sort of a monsoon season. We have a rainy season all summer long. We have expansive mangrove forestation forests. And we even share a spoon-billed wading bird. We have the roseate spoonbill, and you have roseate terns. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I didn't go in details about the coastal issues. I just wanted to bring 2 issues of Sundarbans and Hilsha. But there is another one hub I didn't mention, which is Cox's Bazar hub that lies beside the longest sea beach in the world. And we have an island, very distinct and very, very, pristine. We have spoonbill sandpiper there. But government is going to produce coal-based power plants also there, and Japanese government is financing for it, which is very frustrating. And this is also worthy to mention that JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, they are actually helping our government to develop the power system master plan, which we do not support. We support our experts should do our own plan. We can take technological and knowledge support from our friends and development partners, but after 50 years of independence, we don't need to do our policy and plan by foreign experts. We have a lot of intellectuals and experts working across the globe. So we should do our plan ourselves. But in this particular point, when JICA is involved with the policy formation and developing the power system master plan, they are also investing for coal plant. So it's clearly conflict of interest. And that hub coming from finance by JICA or Japan is basically threatening the very distinct and very exotic species that you were telling about, the spoonbill sandpiper. So not necessarily only we should protect the spoonbill sandpipers there in Cox's Bazar, or we should protect Hilsha from Paira, or we should protect the Bengal tigers, which is the largest habitat we have in the Sundarbans. We must protect these things. But if we do not protect those ecological balance, then the extreme weather patterns that are coming from Indian Ocean towards the coast will hit the nation very badly. So we must understand that those ecological balance are very mandatory for us to protect the lives of the people. And economy is important, but it doesn't go beyond people's life, so first we need to look into this. And another one important thing I want to mention here, because COP26 is going on and you are running it from COP, there was an initiative to develop a fair water footprint declaration, and I don't know if there is any move from any government expecting from British government to come up with this declaration of fair water footprint. But the idea is, I support that idea, because the global population needs to have some legal frameworks or some framework to protect global water. We do not have any framework to protect global water or discuss about global water. We have 1997 Water Course Convention in the United Nations, but all the nations did not ratify it. So COP should come up with something to protect the water as they are coming up with something to protect the forest resources.
It's very good. We've been exploring the rights of nature movements. I don't know if you've been aware of that, but we think it's an important tool to sort of level the playing field and push back on greedy corporations that, you know, they're all eager to keep pushing their, you know, their antiquated fossil fuel systems, and even into getting into some renewable energies and presenting themselves as poster children for everything to be done right, which is often greenwashing, and we have to see through that. But the rights of nature movement is quite interesting, and we're pushing that in Florida to see whether we can add that in our suite of tools to push back on development and growth. That all sounds really, really good. We have another thing in common between Southwest Florida and you. You have your World Heritage Site, mangrove and islands, and we have the Everglades right next door. We also have, you have your Bengal tigers, and we have our endangered panthers. So there's so many parallels between our countries. We need to work really closely together and see if we can advance these issues. Is there anything we can do for you, Sharif, while we're here at COP? Is there anything that you want to push forward? Any message you want to get out to the public? Any petitions you want us to sign? Any kind of support? How can we do to help your work?
Yeah, that's thank you so much. I'm coming to the call from us for the global community to support. But before I go there, I also want to reiterate your rights of the nature. So I'm a little bit involved with that movement too. But Bangladesh is the only country in the world where all the rivers are declared as living entity by the court. If you see for the other examples in Cambodia or Colombia or New Zealand or India that are declared for a section of river or some section of river or one particular river, but Bangladesh is the only country where the Supreme Court declared all the rivers are living entity. So it's very significant to understand that Bangladesh is leading also there, but it is also a matter to understand what the underlying reasons are. I can give only one example, which I can give like hundreds of examples where these verdicts and essence are being violated. But let me give you an example with the power production hub that has been developed, that is under development by JICA. There is a river called Collier River, and they are making a approaching road to the Matarbari coal-based power plants. And they just filled up 7.5 kilometers of a river to make it road. And when we protested it, we heard that a perception from JICA, it will be again excavated and the river will be again rejuvenated. But I don't know how one person can be temporarily killed. It doesn't make any sense. When the river is a living entity, you can't kill it for temporarily. It doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. So this one thing, and I think a very specific message I need, or we all need to spell out in front of the global community who are leading the COP. We must protect global water for the global humanity. Mm-hmm. So water, it is not a matter of boundary. It is not a matter of how much this country has the catchment area or that country has the basin area. It's a global property for global life. It's not only for people, it's for the animals, it's for the plants, it's for the entire globe. So we need some global common frameworks that will have some standardization how global water needs to be managed, and what kind of pollution you cannot do anywhere in the world, and what kind of obstacle you cannot make for any water body that are shared by any common nations or transboundary sharings are there. So one thing, we need to do something to protect global water. And Other thing is basically all the climate vulnerable countries are innocent in terms of the responsibility of this global warming. So the global community, if they want their leadership to be respected and prevailed, they should come up with their willingness to support those vulnerable nations, not in terms of loan or not in terms of helping them. Rather, it's a compensation. Our people are dying for you to run your air conditioning system. So that's one thing global community should come to a consensus. Our people are migrated from their own land. I said you, more than 700,000 people every year for last 10 years. It's a small country. Why will we accommodate them? So the global community also have a lot of space. They can train them, they can take them, they can make them as their resources. There cannot be any better resource than human being in this world. So you just train it, you just plan it, and you just utilize that. And let's work together and let's bring prosperity and sustainability of the entire planet. Of course, for Bangladesh as a coastal nation.
Yeah, I mean, what you talk about, the migration caused by the climate crisis is really very, very critical in your country. We have the opposite issue. Everyone's gravitating to the coast for the moment, and that creates its own set of stresses on the infrastructure. But, you know, your capital city will be inundated with people, more trash, more pollution coming out of that city and emanating throughout the country. So we really have to be aware of that. And the issue keeps coming up, loss and damage for the countries that were not perpetrators of this crisis, but who are the primary recipients of the damage. So we need to keep that in mind and make sure that you know, that some of the policies coming out of the COP26 address that injustice. So that's perfect, Sharif. And you were in the newspaper this morning, I saw, up here in COP, talking about your work. So we celebrate you, we salute you. We are brothers in arms, and we will all keep marching forward in the Waterkeeper movement. Thank you so much for your support and your terrific pioneering work there in Bangladesh. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate the time you took to speak with us about your issues. We also look forward to updates all during the week. If you have something that you want to share with us during the week that we want to, you know, fold into the story, we really welcome that as well. So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
So much for holding your hands there to endure the eternal earth.
We shall do our best. All right. Thank you very much, Sharif. It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Yeah, so there's another example of a water warrior, you know, around the globe. I was particularly struck by the climate migration, and we're really just on the cusp of the effects of climate change. We're going to see tectonic shifts, whether it's the upheaval of our biosphere, changing invasive species that weren't naturally in our environments, and changes of that sort in our but also human changes, migrations. I spoke to Jennifer Colt today, and she's the Humboldt Bay Waterkeeper, director of Humboldt Bay Waterkeeper. And she talked about climate change migration in North California, because she's having thousands of people moving away from the areas that were devastated by fire. They're either tired, they've lost their houses, or they don't want to be breathing that smoke 150 days a year, and they're moving to Humboldt. So she's got the housing prices are going, are raising, and it's creating all kinds of turbulence. And so these are just preliminary indications of the changes that we're going to have to confront. John, I'm sure you have some thoughts about that too. Weigh in if you have anything you want to contribute, John.
Well, I really enjoyed that interview from our waterkeeper in Bangladesh, and it reminded me, he talked about the opportunities for, as you did, opportunities and imperative for cooperation among waterkeepers, among water specialists and advocates around the world. And it reminded me that perhaps 12 years ago, I hosted a professor and a couple of students from Bangladesh And we worked together on some water management and water quality treatment concepts here in South Florida. And we published a paper together. And you pointed out how, like Bangladesh, South Florida is extremely low-lying. You mentioned how Collier County is entirely below 5 meters, and almost all of South Florida, we living in South Florida tend to think of South Florida as being all of Florida, is largely below 6 meters. And as you go up peninsular Florida, you reach perhaps 50 meters as you near Georgia and such. But the Kissimmee Waterkeeper Basin extends from about 100 feet down to about 18 feet elevation near Lake Okeechobee. But some of my other thoughts, I talked about how critical nations like China, India, and Russia were either not represented in the pavilions or inadequately represented. The nations with the most impressive, visually impressive pavilions this year are somewhat disconcerting. It's Qatar and United Arab Emirates. And these are, the fossil fuel leaders of the world, production leaders largely on a per capita basis, perhaps. And Saudi Arabia also had a huge exhibit. So we're seeing a shift in the representation and the emphasis here at COP, and I hope that doesn't continue. Another observation I had was walking around the pavilions today and looking at the schedules of their sessions. At least a half dozen of the pavilions had sessions on hydropower, and almost invariably the title of the session included the terms sustainable hydropower. So clearly that's a topic of hot debate right now, as Chris, our international waterkeeper director, has emphasized. So I'll be trying to sit in on some of those later. At the US Center, I noticed that we had this afternoon a session on SMRs, small modular reactors. That's the new buzzword in the nuclear industry. So even the United States is looking at that sort of technology as a potential part of the solution. And tomorrow's emphasis here at COP is youth and public empowerment. And waterkeepers are all about public empowerment. So I think we have a lot to look forward to tomorrow and a lot to cover. So I'm looking forward to doing that with you tomorrow, Casey.
During the week, we're going to be talking to Bruno Monteferri, who is the waterkeeper in Peru. And he's going to be talking about the Marañón River, which is an important body of water in Peru, and how efforts are underway to keep it from being dammed. We're going to talk to Jennifer Kaltz, the Humboldt Bay waterkeeper. They have twice the level of sea rise than the rest of California, because while the sea is rising, their land surface is dropping because of some tectonic shift. So they are on the front lines in terms of sea level rise. We'll hear from her. We'll be hearing from Meg Ale, who's the waterkeeper in Nepal, and they have a whole set of issues that I was unaware of that are really fascinating, and others during the week. So we really look forward to sharing some of those stories with you. We so appreciate your tuning in. You can, send us messages and we'll try to respond to them right away. You can even put messages in the chat and we'll try to get back to you and respond. And perhaps you have subjects that you want us to pursue. So we're happy to take some direction from you. So with that, we will wrap this up, and we will bid you a good evening or a good morning or a good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. And we really thank you for joining us again. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Thank you very much.